Hey fellow gliders, welcome back. This is Robert Petito, and today we're going to take a look at Glide AI. So Glide AI is Glide's newest feature that is baked into the data editor and the actions within inside of Glide apps. No need for configuring ChatGPT or OpenAI inside of your Glide app in order to leverage artificial intelligence. Glide now has their own flagship product that uses a conglomeration of different AI models and platforms and services based upon the need. Now, if you really wanted to leverage OpenAI, Glide does have an OpenAI integration. I did a video on that. I'll post it in the link below. You can also click right over here and get access to that. But today we're going to take a look at Glide's proprietary AI product, which is Glide AI. Now, Glide AI is still in beta, and it's available for pro tiers and above. But what's nice about Glide AI is that you don't need to configure models or prompts. All you have to do is type in natural language, and Glide does all of the heavy lifting on the back end and provides you a quick response. In my testing, I have found that it's even faster than OpenAI responses when you're leveraging it directly in the data table. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look. So Glide makes it plain as day that this is the newest product, right? As soon as you open up any of your team folders, you're going to see this banner at the top, which talks about introducing Glide AI, which is in beta, and it talks about how it's available on pro plans and above. They do have like an Explore Glide AI button here that you can click, and it's going to navigate you to, I believe, the documentation and some sample videos and testimonials about leveraging Glide AI. But we're just going to dive right in because the best way to learn something new is to play with it. So I'm going to go ahead and start a brand new app. I'll just call it anything. Maybe our use case here can be, an expense reporter. All right, let's do mobile. Hit continue. Start with a Glide table. Create app. And as always, Glide starts us off with these things in categories, which I'm going to quickly delete here. So there's two ways to leverage Glide AI in your projects. You can use it as an action, which means that whenever there's a user interaction somewhere, someone pushes a button or submits a form, that the AI will run and generate an output. Or you can leverage it as a computed column type, which is a dedicated AI column, which will accept data from somewhere else in your data table and then consistently run the AI to generate a new response based upon the data input. So let's take a look at the second instance, the leveraging it as a column type. So if I have this expense reporter, maybe I want to submit an invoice, and then Glide will take a look at the invoice and generate some data based upon what it sees. So here I have this expense log. I have the title, or I guess this may be the expense, an invoice image that I'm going to upload here, a description, timestamp, and owner. All right, maybe we don't even need the description here. So we just have timestamp and owner. So just some simple columns that I'm going to fill out as part of submitting this new invoice. All right, so let's go ahead and create a screen that lets me upload a new invoice. In my layout, I'm going to create a new screen from my expense log. And it automatically creates a collection for me. I'm going to put it as list view. And it automatically creates this add new button here. All right, so if I push the add new, it's going to add a new item to my expense log. I'm going to leave everything just kind of boilerplate for now. And here's where I can select the invoice, and the timestamp and owner. Those can be columns I can just pass along the back end using some special values. So those special values exist in the special values portion of Glide here. So I can use the current date and time to be the timestamp. And I can use my app's user email to be the owner. All right, so when I add a new expense, I can give it a title for what this expense is, and then upload an invoice. Let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be a consulting invoice. And the invoice is going to be this one that I just happened to find online here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and submit this. All right, nothing special. I have this new record with the consulting invoice and the image. In my data table, that's the new record that shows up here. All right, but now we can leverage Glide AI to pull information out of this image. Take a look at this. So I can add a new column. This column will be of a type AI, and these are all the different things that we can add AI-wise. Right? And the first thing I'm going to choose here is image to text. Now, image to text, I believe, is reserved for the business users only. But just so you see how this works, I'm going to select image to text. The image is going to be the invoice. And there's a few things I can do. I can describe what this image is, a close-up of a receipt. Not so helpful in this use case. Okay, or I can pull out the data as JSON, which is an organized version of the text that it might see in there. Okay, or I can do extract text. And double clicking inside of here, we can see all of this information that it happened to find inside of the invoice. Now this is very unstructured. So if I wanted to structure the data, I certainly could using the JSON method. Let's call this column extract text. What's nice about extracting it as JSON is that now it found the data and it also labeled the data to the best of its ability. So now you can use this information if you're looking to try to query it at a later date, or to call upon it, or to target it using some other columns. All right, let's use some other AI columns to see if we can pull out some of this information. So this is nice that it found some text. Let's go ahead and try to find the total. So for our basic AI, we can select our total to be a number because we want our format to be of a number value. So we can say text to number, and we give it some instructions. Right? So the instructions that we can give this AI column is to extract the total amount of the invoice. And our input is going to be the extracted text. And we see that it found the number, the total of 5,500. And now we can format this number as currency. And just so we can see it, right, indeed, our amount due is 5,500 as the total. Looking at the invoice, it looks like there is an invoice number, which is a bunch of zeros and then a 5. So we could extract the invoice number here as well. A couple of ways to do that. One thing to watch out for is how you want the data formatted. So if I say invoice number, and I say generate, let's say using text to number, right? Now what it's going to do, it's going to find that invoice number as all those leading zeros and 5 and output a number. So if I say invoice number and I say extract the invoice number, but the input here is the extract text, you see that it outputs the number 5 without the leading zeros, which might not be what you want. You might want those leading zeros. So in which case, you don't want text to number, but rather you want just generate text and give it those same instructions, the same input. And you should see that it has leading zeros. Now, you also see that it has like some filler text like the invoice number is 0005. So if you don't want that, simply write value only after your instructions. And you see that you just get the value only without any sort of pleasantries generated by the AI model. If you wanted to display these line items, you certainly could. Maybe you want these line items maybe in JSON format so you can send them somewhere, completely up to you. Again, that's going to be a generate text. We'll call this line items, and I'll say extract the line items in JSON format, value only, save. And double clicking in here, we see that we have a table. Inside the table, we have description, rate, quantity, and line total. So we have project 5,000, 1, 5,000, expenses 500, quantity 1 for a total of 500. And that does align with our description table right down over here. If you didn't want it in JSON, you wanted it in some other format, you could certainly do that as well. You could say as HTML or just a CSV, however you wanted to display that information on the front side, you certainly could. So we can see in our invoice that the amount paid is currently $0. So maybe we want to have an indicator as to whether or not we've already paid this invoice based upon the invoice that we're uploading. So what I could do here is add another generate text, but we're going to choose text to Boolean, which would be a true false value. And I can say, was this invoice already paid? And when I point it to the extract text here, we should see that it's not been paid here because it found that in our extract text, that amount paid is 0. So for this reason, our Boolean value is false. Now, when it comes to displaying this information, all we have to do is put this information into different components on a detail screen. One thing I'm going to change here is the line items. I'm going to say extract the line items in simple HTML table, or as a simple HTML table. And we see we have a simple HTML table that was generated for us. That looks awesome. And I'm going to display all this information now on the details screen of this collection. So before I do this, maybe the description here can be the total, just so I see how much this was for. Diving in, we see that it already has some basic information here, and we don't necessarily need a big old image on top of here. And now we can add in additional information into our fields. So I'm just going to just keep on clicking add item, trying to get all the things, and I can always remove them after the fact. Okay, so line items I'm going to remove. This extract text we don't need. Invoice is fine. And then for the line items, we can actually display that as a rich text since it was formatted as an HTML table. Rich text allows you to submit any sort of data that's in HTML or Markdown and display it very prettily. So rich text, and I'm going to select our line items table. And now we have it as some very simple table. It's not perfect, you know, we'll have to probably massage that data a little bit or the prompt a little bit, but you see that's not stretching across the width of the screen. I wonder if there's a way to do that under the prompt. So let's say as a simple HTML table with inline CSS to color every other row and make the table responsive to 100%. Let's see if that does anything. And look at that. That's amazing, isn't it? So I know I didn't have to figure out how to do this. I didn't have to go to onto a website and figure out how to, you know, make this perfect HTML table. I just told it what I wanted, and boom, there it is. That looks fantastic. All right, so that's how you can leverage Glide AI using columns. But let's say you wanted to leverage Glide AI with actions instead. So the only thing that would change is that instead of leveraging all of these Glide AI columns, you would have basic columns. So you would have a number column and a text column and so forth. And then you'll use actions to write those values into your table. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and export this table. I'm going to keep all of the columns that I've already created, and I'm going to go ahead and import that like so. All right, so instead of columns, let's call this actions. And we see that all of our Glide AI columns are now just basic column types. So back in our expense log, I'm going to go ahead and point this to the actions table instead. Okay, adding a new row here. We're not going to add in all of these things. I'm going to go ahead and close all of these out. Okay, and so we're still going to upload an invoice, but then what we need to do is craft our onSubmit action here. So by default, your onSubmit action is just a show notification when you're on a form screen. But if we want AI to do some things after this form has been submitted, so I can write these values to your basic columns, then we have to tell it so in this onSubmit action. All right, so in this onSubmit, I am going to create a new action, and we're going to say launch Glide AI. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is we can still show notification. That's fine. Afterwards, we see we now have AI actions. And so the first thing we have to do here is do our image to text. And our text is going to end up inside of this extract text column. The image is the invoice, and our method, again, if you remember, was the extract text as JSON. Now, I want to make sure that there's text in there before I run anything else. So I'm going to add in a wait for condition action. I'm going to wait until, for this condition, I'm going to wait until the extract text column actually has some text in it from our previous step of the image to text. Okay, and it probably won't take very long, so I'll give it 5 seconds. And while it's loading, I'll say making magic. Okay, and then all of the columns we had as Glide AI columns, I'll now substitute using Glide actions. So I might not do all of them here because you probably get the gist of it. But for example, this text Boolean column, we could say, was the invoice paid. Result is going to end up inside of that paid column, and our input again is the extract text. Okay, next we could say what was the amount, which was our text to number. Extract the total. Input was our extract text. Output will be our total. We'll have our generate text, which was extract the invoice number. Result was invoice number. Input was our extract text. And the last thing was our table of line items. So extract the line items as basic HTML table with inline CSS that alternates colors and is responsive, full width, 100%. I didn't phrase that perfectly, but we'll see if it knows what I'm trying to do. Okay, so it's going to be the extract text, and result is going to be our our extract text. No, sorry, our line items. Okay, so it's going to do all of these things all at once. Let's go ahead and give it a whirl. So our title is consulting invoice, submit. Okay, should be doing its thing. And now, there we see. Okay, so it did all of its magic there. Description to total, so we should have a total in there, which we do. And so opening up our result, we see everything is as it should be. Look at that. We have our image up on top, our title, total, invoice number. Invoice number didn't have the leading zeros. I might need to adjust that prompt maybe a little bit. But it has that markdown table, even though I botched the prompt on that. But yeah, so that's how you could leverage Glide AI as actions rather than columns. Now, there are pros and cons to using columns over actions. So some of the pros for using columns is that you don't need to configure the action editor at all. So the layout and the action is much simpler, and then the data just is here inside of your data editor. And if you need to make adjustments to the prompts, you can very, very easily, as you saw that I had done that here, and with the line items by adding the prompt to make it responsive and so forth. And we see that the output generates automatically. The con is that it's probably going to incur more updates as you tweak and adjust and fine tune and so forth, right? Every time you do that, or every time the data changes, or every 30 days, these columns are going to run again. And so that'll be however many updates per column all over again. The other con is that none of these items are editable. So if you really wanted to extract a value that you would want your user then to go through and then edit on their own volition, you wouldn't be able to, because it's not a basic column type. Whereas here in the actions, right, all of these are basic columns, and any one of these can be in, and they can go in and edit them using an edit screen and glide and so forth. So if perhaps you're having the app generate a sample email that you want to send to one of your clients, right? You could have an action generate that email and then provide an edit screen for them to fine tune the email before actually sending it. Whereas columns, you can't do that, right? Because it's just what you see is what you get, and that's it. So again, pros and cons to columns versus actions. Now, there are a couple of columns that I haven't mentioned yet that are part of the Glide AI suite. The first one here is the text to choice column. This will allow you to categorize or provide, instead of outputting just free text, you can specify a series of keywords for it to output based upon your instructions. So maybe I want to categorize this invoice, right? So for instructions, I could say provide an appropriate category, right? The input again is our extract text. And then the choices here, I could select all of these, copy them and paste them as the choices with inside of my columns here, right? It's got to be comma separated. Or I can bring them in using a join list column. So I could say possible categories. How we spell categories wrong. All right, type will be a join list. And what a join list does is it takes a look at a relation or a table and outputs a comma-separated list of values, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I can join the text in my categories, and I'm going to get rid of that space that it provides for me. And I can feed this into my category choices field, this one. And so of the possible categories, it thinks it's office supplies, which I have project and expenses. Not sure if that's really pertinent, but it's probably because I don't have great categories here. So maybe I could say consulting. And if I go back to my columns, there we go. We see that category is now consulting because it's more appropriate for that particular invoice. So that's really useful. You can provide it keywords, or yes, no, or true, false, or pass, fail, or recommended, not recommended. You can give it, a series of choices to pick from, and then it'll do its best to categorize them. Okay, another one is audio to text. So here it can take a look at an audio file and transcribe it. So maybe I want to create some audio notes based upon my invoice, and it can then extract those notes and display it as plain text. So just so you see what that looks like, I'm going to go ahead and create a basic column type, and we'll call this audio recording. Inside of my detail screen, I can generate an audio recorder and point it to the audio recording. And now I can record something about my consulting invoice, and maybe I want to display whatever that is in some sort of text. So here I have my audio recording. I'm going to use an AI column to do audio to text. I'm going to point it to my audio recording, and let's call it transcription or transcribed audio. All right, so let's go ahead and record this. Haven't yet paid this invoice, plan on paying on September the 15th, waiting to hear back from HR. Okay, so now my recording has been saved, and all I have to do now is display that recording in any sort of text-like component, maybe as a hint component. And there we go. Now, the only Glide AI column we haven't taken a look at yet is brand new. It just came out this week. This is a document to text AI column / action. So it's very similar to the extract text from image action and column we took a look at here. The difference is that the extract text from image only works on a singular image, and it must be like a JPEG or a PNG kind of file. Whereas the extract text from document allows you to upload a multi-page document and then run the extract on it. So it's much more robust. This particular AI column is only reserved for business tier and above. But let me show you how it works. So it'll be very, very similar. Here in my expense log, I'm going to go ahead and say this extract text. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And instead of saying image to text, I'm going to point it to document to text. Okay, and I'm still going to point it to the invoice here. Now, the only difference, again, is that I don't get to choose my format. It's just going to do raw data, but it's going to grab all of the data here that you'll see, and it should still find all of the information that we were looking for. So the next what we'll have to do is point all of our columns to the extract text. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, and done. So let's go ahead and upload a multi-page PDF and see if it generates accurate output. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new expense. So the only thing I have to change here is that it can't be an image picker. It's going to have to be a file picker. So I'm going to choose file picker and still point it to my invoice. Let's go ahead and pick that invoice. And let's run it. All right, so I found a balance of $750,982, along with a whole bunch of information here. Let's go to our data. We see that things are still extracting. We indeed see that our balance is $750,982. Doesn't appear to be dollars, but that's okay. It just happened to be one invoice that I found online for sample purposes here. We have an invoice number. We have our line items, which doesn't come over quite as nicely as it did last time. It has not been paid yet, and categorized. It looks like all of these are indeed technology related items. So it says technology services, and it looks pretty good though otherwise. Our invoice number for some reason is absolutely huge. Probably because it has that dollar or that number sign in front. So we can say, so it's thinking that it's markdown. So we could say value only, letters and numbers only. Hit save, and that looks a little bit better. All right, so yeah, I wish I could format this HTML a little bit better, but what's powerful though is I was able to upload a multiple page PDF, and within seconds, Glide took a look at that PDF and started pulling out pieces that it saw, was able to manipulate the data and answer questions about that data almost instantaneously here. So I hope you were able to get a taste of what's possible with Glide AI, and it might sound a bit cliche, but it's true that the possibilities here are endless. And what's awesome is that Glide provides us this functionality without any sort of additional setup or API calls or grabbing API keys or anything with OpenAI. Glide just works, and it works quick, and it works powerfully. And so if you're interested in leveraging AI in your own app, Glide AI is definitely worth a look. If you need some of those business features, Glide does offer a 14-day free trial of the business plan to see if it might meet your needs. Check the link in my description below. If you have any questions at all about how I built this app, feel free to leave me a comment below. You can always reach out to me at Twitter at @artpetito. And as always, thanks for watching.